Chapter 8 A Talk at Home. On Sunday morning, Mr. and Mrs. Arable and Fern were sitting having breakfast in the kitchen. Avery had finished and was upstairs looking for his slingshot. "Did you know that Uncle Homer's goslings had hatched?" said Fern. "How many?" said Mr. Arable. "7," said Fern. "There were 8 eggs, but one didn't hatch, and the goose told Templeton she didn't want any more, so he took it away." "The goose did what?" asked Mrs. Arable, gazing at her daughter with a worried look. "Told Templeton she didn't want the egg any more," said Fern. "Who's Templeton?" "Oh, he's the rat," replied Fern. "None of us like him very much." "Who's us?" asked Mr. Arable. "Oh, everybody in the barn cellar, Wilbur, and the sheep, and the lambs, and the goose, and the gander, and the goslings, and then Charlotte and me." "Charlotte? Who's Charlotte?" "She's Wilbur's best friend. She's terribly clever." "Well, what does she look like?" asked Mrs. Arable. "Well," thought Fern, "she has 8 legs. All spiders do, I guess. Charlotte is a spider?" Fern nodded. "A big gray one. She has a web across the top of Wilbur's doorway. She catches flies and sucks their blood, and Wilbur adores her." "Does he really?" said Mrs. Arable, rather vaguely. She was staring at Fern with a worried expression on her face. "Oh, yes, Wilbur adores Charlotte," said Fern. "Do you know what Charlotte said when the goslings hatched?" "I haven't the faintest idea," said Mr. Arable. "Tell us." "Well, the first gosling stuck its little head out from under the goose. I was sitting on my stool in the corner, and Charlotte was on her web, and she made a speech, and she said, 'I am sure that every one of us here in the barn cellar will be gratified to learn that after 4 weeks of unremitting effort and patience on the part of the goose, she now has something to show for it.' Don't you think that was a pleasant thing for her to say?" "Yes, I do," said Mr. Arable. "Now, Fern, it's time to get ready for Sunday school, and tell Avery to get ready, and this afternoon you can tell me more about what goes on at Uncle Homer's barn. Aren't you spending quite a lot of time there? You go there just about every day." "I like it there," said Fern. She wiped her mouth and ran upstairs, and then she left the room, and Mrs. Arable spoke in a low voice to her husband. "I worry about Fern," she said. "Did you hear about how she rambled on about those animals, pretending like they talked?" Mr. Arable chuckled. "Maybe they do talk," he said. "I've sometimes wondered. At any rate, don't worry about Fern. She's just got a lively imagination. Kids think they hear all sorts of things." "Just the same, I do worry about her," said Mrs. Arable. "I think I shall ask Dr. Dorian about her next time he sees her. He loves Fern almost as much as we do, and I want him to know how strangely she is acting about that pig and everything. I don't think it's normal. You know perfectly well animals do not talk." Mr. Arable grinned. "Maybe our ears just aren't as sharp as Fern's." What do you think?